The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill is one of the best albums of all time. But why is it so incredible? Let's get specific. Today we're talking about the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, finding the musical influences that weave together so perfectly. Getting into how this album was made, talking to a member of her band.
She knows music on a different level, to where she even studies what chords bring positive vibes to audiences.
And seeing how this album is really a re-education, taking something you think you know and showing you another way. I don't want to do the whole, this album was released on August 25th, 1998. I mean, it was, but let's just dive straight into the album. We'll catch the details as we go. After the intro, we get into the first song, Lost Ones. Right away, we've got a strong hip-hop beat with scratching leading into the first verse. But then as soon as Ms. Hill starts, we get this reggae guitar chord. One big thing about this album is it's difficult to call it just one genre. It's hip-hop, it's R&B, it's reggae, it's soul, it's Ms. Lauryn Hill. This album is a combination of a lot of different things. It doesn't easily fit into one box. And neither, it turns out, does Ms. Hill. She's described this album as wanting to write songs that lyrically move me and have the integrity of reggae and the knock of hip-hop and the instrumentation of classic soul. My engineer and I worked on a sound that's raw. I like the rawness of you being able to hear the scratch in the vocals. I don't ever want that taken away. I don't like to use compressors and take away my textures because I was raised on music that was recorded before technology advanced to the place where it could be smooth. I want to hear that thickness of sound. You can't get that from a computer because a computer's too perfect. But that human element, that's what makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I love that. Ms. Hill had a specific sound in mind from the get-go, and as we'll see in a minute, she carries this onto her live performances today. This album was recorded partially in New York and partially in Kingston, Jamaica. Ms. Hill was in a relationship with Rohan Marley, Bob Marley's son, and became pregnant with their child. This was a very important factor in several songs on the album, which we'll talk about more, but this is Bob Marley's grandson. That's crazy. This reggae sound can be heard all throughout the album, but on this song in particular, there's a musical nod to the Sister Nancy song Bomb Bomb from 1982. Sister Nancy's a Jamaican dancehall artist who'd been directly sampled by artists before, like Pete Rock and CL Smooth, Too Short, Main Source, Criss Cross even, and many more. But whereas the most commonly sampled part is this, Ms. Hill is reinterpreting Sister Nancy's full chorus hook. Here it is pitched down a little bit. Here's Ms. Hill. You might win some, but you really lost one. Quick shout out to Ortofon, by the way. I already use their turntable needles, and they just sent me this new pair that's specifically for Timecode. Not a sponsor, but thank you. There are so many ways that this album is Ms. Hill insisting to do things her way. Musically, it's a mix of many different genres, instruments, themes. Ms. Hill is singing and rapping, and doing both at a level that was beyond what was happening in the mainstream in 1998, and honestly, still rare today. Another way that Ms. Hill is doing it her own way is the fact that this is a solo album. She was of course a member of the Fugees, who have their own classic album, 1996's The Score. Without getting into all the Fugees drama, it was a messy situation. She and Wyclef were romantically involved, the group clashed on a lot of things, and disbanded. Wyclef reportedly told other musicians if they work with her, they can't work with him. It was a lot. So when her first lines on the album on Lost Ones are, "Funny how money changes situation, miscommunication lead to complication, my emancipation don't fit your equation," she's bringing the heat immediately. This heat continues on the next song, X Factor. Instrumentation-wise, there's drums, bass, piano, organ, there's timpani in there. This brings a more unusual orchestral sound to the song, which again is just combining genres. And then there's that bird sound effect in there. Here it is with no drums. That effect kind of reminds me of the Tribe Called Quest song, Electric Relaxation. Here it is without drums. I don't think it's necessarily a super intentional reference, and even for the listener, you may not be conscious of it, but now that I've pointed it out, do you feel like there's something there? It feels to me like all throughout this album, there are moments that combine different musical genres, some things you're familiar with, either the hip-hop sound of the drums, or the reggae guitar, or something as subtle as a bird sound effect that vaguely resembles a tribe song. Or speaking of subtle references, here's her opening vocal line.
It could all be so simple.
This is borrowed from the Gladys Knight song The Way We Were. Here it is pitched down to match.
Can it be that it was all so simple then?
This is a soul song from 1974, but was also sampled in 1993 by the mighty Wu-Tang Clan on the song Can It All Be So Simple. But is Ms. Hill referencing the mighty Wu-Tang Clan, a hip-hop song on a classic album, or Gladys Knight, the Empress of Soul? Yes. It feels like in these musical moments, whether they're more obvious or more subtle, Ms. Hill is cleverly mixing so many different influences in and making something new. She's not delivering this album from up above as if there's no outside influence. She's taking elements from a bunch of different things around her. Hip-hop, soul, reggae, a pinch of this, a dash of that, fusing it all together. I recently spoke with LaDerrick Perry, who plays keys in her band, and as he explained,
she knows music on a different level.
Yeah.
And so she's like, I know that's the chord, but what else could you do? Like, add something in there, add a ninth in it. Oh, she's with it. Like she's with it all. So she's like, you know, make it bright, make it beautiful. So
yeah,
a lot of those arrangements come from her. No, she's very much involved in everything. To the voicings, she's heavy on the energy and bringing positive vibes to the audience, to where she even studies what chords bring positive vibes to audiences. So we'll include those chords into a song specifically, you know?
By the way, additional clips from my talk with LaDerrick are going up on the new complimentary channel, Digging the Talks, and our full conversation is dropping on the Digging the Greats podcast in the next couple of days. Go subscribe to both of those, links in the description. This song seems to be about Wyclef, and man, it's just gut-wrenching. Her vocal performance is so emotional, so raw, so personal, you can feel it. This culminates on the bridge with this vocal part you may recognize. It was sampled most recently by Drake and Cardi B. Just a couple of songs into the album, it's clear that she's been going through a lot. After quitting the Fugees, Ms. Hill decided to start her solo album with an all-new crew of people, and with Wyclef drawing a hard line in the sand for other people, she kinda had to. Ms. Hill turned to a group of musicians collectively known as Newark, who helped her with the album. Of course, there was the now infamous lawsuit shortly after the album came out. Newark sued Ms. Hill because they said they weren't properly credited as writers and producers, and instead were listed as additional production or additional music and lyrical contribution. Che Vicious, who was a co-producer on the album, says that there was an A team with people like him and James Poyser, while Newark was the B team, and he had to clean up and redo some of their work. But he also said there was label pressure to, quote, do the Prince thing and say that it was all written and produced by Ms. Hill herself, but that she didn't do it on her own. So now there are 3 versions of the story all competing. It's just a mess. Look, I'm not here to try and settle this issue. In fact, Ms. Hill settled with Newark out of court, but I think the reality is likely a little of both, or all 3 versions of the story, mixed with a lot of drama and hurt feelings that's grown into a different, untrue version in more recent years. I'm sure there are people in the comments below that disagree, but based on everything I've come across, this sounds like a collaborative effort led by Ms. Hill, helping her make incredibly personal songs that, yes, should have been properly credited. Because you can't write something so personal and emotional for someone else like these first 2 songs, or especially the next one, To Zion. If there's a single song that boils down Ms. Hill's life at this time, moving out of the Fugees, hurt but a rising star, and wanting to do things her way, it's this song. To Zion features Carlos Santana on guitar and is about her firstborn son, Zion, who she was pregnant with shortly after leaving the Fugees. She sings the words,
Look at your career, they say. Lauryn, baby, use your head. But instead, I chose to use my heart.
Ms. Lauryn Hill had just left the Fugees, got a brand new team of people, is pregnant with her first child, Bob Marley's grandson, and she decided to keep him? By the way, Ms. Hill is 22, 23 years old. There's so much happening in her life and so many people telling her to do things one way or another, but she's doing it differently. In her life and also on this album. That's why this album is so incredible and why it's remained a classic for 25 years. Ms. Hill is doing things her way. Musically, with the sonic textures and references, lyrically, calling out her old collaborators, and in her life by keeping her child just as her career is starting to take off in a huge way. This album is called The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, but this is more than that. It's not just about how she learned things the wrong way. She's re-educating herself and the listener. You don't have to do it one certain way. You don't have to just rap. You don't have to just sing. You don't have to fit perfectly into one box, and as we see on this album, Ms. Hill certainly doesn't. This plays out in bigger picture things like the hip-hop sound of the drums, but also on a more granular level, like what specific chords and voicings her band plays during her live shows.
The extra tension chords in there, she wants to hear it all. So she knows, she'll be like, that's too bland, add a tension in it, or that's too much, take away the tension, you know what I mean? You know, she's very much into giving an amazing show to each audience. And she doesn't want to play the same show at all. Like, she'll change something. She'll be like, I'll put this on here and put this on here, because she doesn't want to give the same show off to every audience. She wants each audience to have a tailor-made show for them.
We haven't even talked about the biggest hit from the album, Doo-Wop. Parentheses, that thing. This song is a throwback to doo-wop music, but mixes in hip-hop, she's singing, she's rapping like crazy. Commissioner Gordon, who mixed the album, says when he mixed it, this is 128 tracks. 2 48-track machines plus 24 2-inch tape machines running at the same time. That's insane. This song also musically references the Fifth Dimension song Together Let's Find Love. It's not a direct sample and not quite an interpolation, but check us out.
You know I only stay cause I'm truly genuine. Don't be a hard rock when you really are a baby girl. Respect is just the minimum. You still defending them now. Lauren is only human. Don't think I haven't been the same predicament.
The song Superstar sees Ms. Hill frustrated with the state of hip-hop and music in general, and also the paradox of art versus fame. In another recent video, I talked about how crazy fame is and what it can do to you, and listening to the third verse of this song, it feels like Ms. Hill is grappling with the same thing.
All I wanted was to sell like 500 and be a ghetto superstar since my first album, Blunted.
She was never trying to be a huge star, she just wanted to make music. Blunted on Reality is the name of the Fugees' first album.
I used to work at Foot Locker, they fired me in front it.
Okay, so she got fired from Foot Locker.
Oh, I quit it, now I spit it. However do you want it now?
Wait, she's changing her story. Specifically to make herself look better on the song. Oh, now I get it.
Now you get it.
Yeah.
Writing rhymes in the range with the frames lightly tinted and send it to your block and have my full names a minute.
She's writing her rhymes, which may not be true, in a nice cushy Range Rover, then sending it back to the streets where she's got full credibility. I mean, she's speaking tongue-in-cheek here, saying this is how it is for a lot of artists. They're not really living like their songs say they are. They've got a cushy life now, but they're presenting something different. This struggle to reconcile her art with her fame partially explains why she retreated from the public eye after this album. However, Ms. Hill has more recently said that after this album, no one from her label reached out to ask about a follow-up album, and that, I began touring because I needed the creative outlet and to support myself and my family. People were more interested in breaking me or using me to battery power whatever they had going on to support my creativity. I create at the speed and flow of inspiration, which doesn't always work in a traditional system. I have always had to custom build what I've needed in order to get things done. And about her touring band. While she has yet to release a follow-up album, she still takes her music and her art incredibly seriously.
We rehearse year-round. Let me just put that out there. We're rehearsing at least 3 to 4 days a week all year.
Wow. Even if there's nothing on the calendar.
Even if there's nothing on the calendar, we're rehearsing. We're tightening something up.
Like preparation is the name of the game.
Preparation has to be, because on the fly, she can pull out a song. Like right now, we're only doing Miseducation because it's the 25th anniversary. But she might pull out a Fuji song. Strumming My Pain with His Fingers is a Fuji song. So she might pull one of those out at a show. So you never know.
I'm running out of time to cover every song on this album, but there's two more I want to focus on. One is Nothing Even Matters, a beautiful, slow love song that features D'Angelo. The original plan was for these artists to do a swap, and Ms. Hill would be featured on a song on Voodoo from 2000, but that ultimately fell through. Also, that whole story is in another video already, but hang on to this D'Angelo thing, because that's where we're gonna end. Just remember, D'Angelo also had to grapple with fame after releasing Voodoo, and didn't release a follow-up until 2014, when he released Black Messiah. Another huge hit from this album is Can't Take My Eyes Off of You, a cover of the Frankie Valli song. This song was never intended to be a commercial single. It was recorded for the soundtrack to the movie Conspiracy Theory, and after blowing up on the radio, it was included on the album. Commissioner Gordon recalled recording this with Ms. Hill in his apartment. She's 8 months pregnant, lying on her back, holding a handheld mic, and laying this song down basically in one take, beatbox and everything. Ms. Lauryn Hill is an incredible artist, and on the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, she re-educates herself and everyone within earshot, rejecting the idea of fitting in one nice, neat little box. Talking to LaDerrick Perry, it's clear that she's serious about her music, and even though she has yet to release a follow-up studio album since...
I'll just say this. She never stopped writing. She never stopped recording, and she never stopped writing.
Similar thing like with D'Angelo, with Voodoo, because he didn't have anything for a long time after, and then Black Messiah was worth the wait. It feels like you could do a similar thing, and especially if she's like been working this whole time and is not like, you know, trying to dust stuff off, but if she's like top form, then that's going to be absolutely incredible music that I feel like the world needs right now, like the music industry needs and the world needs.
We're saying the same exact thing.
That cover, by the way, Can't Take My Eyes Off You, Ms. Hill was very familiar with covering an older song in a new way. The Fugees' album The Score features several covers, including the Roberta Flack song Killing Me Softly. Except, Roberta Flack isn't actually the original artist. To dive into that story, though, you gotta click here.